Chapter 4. Shadows on Karkassan. Part 1. The Coming of Night. There were no warnings, no alarms, no fleet signatures blinking into detection range, no orbital Vox demands. The people of Karkassan died in silence. The first to vanish were the watchtower crews on the outer rim of the mining installations. The planetary defense grid registered slight power fluctuations, then flickers of movement on external cams, shadows dancing, unexplained shapes crawling along the ceilings. Moments later, those feeds went dark. No alarms were raised. The central command hub chalked it up to Karkassan's aging infrastructure and the mine's ever-present dust storms. By the time the alarms did sound, it was already far too late. The Night Lords came without mercy, without pattern, and without even the pretense of sanity. They landed not in force but in claws, small warbands that infiltrated the city's bones, then tore their way out. In Mine Complex Theta 9, a PDF patrol discovered their own comrades strung up by their intestines above the main cargo elevator, blood still warm. Vox links screamed with incoherent messages, sobbing, laughter, begging for death and then silence. Lights flickered throughout the hab districts, sometimes revealing pale, laughing figures crawling across the ceilings with talon-bladed gauntlets. Then darkness would reclaim the room, and screams would echo through the walls. Entire residential blocks were depopulated within hours, not conquered, consumed. The Night Lords moved like a disease, not with tactical cohesion but with psychological malice. They deliberately jammed distress signals, letting isolated pockets of survivors believe rescue was possible. They broadcast distorted Vox loops of loved ones screaming for help. They dragged children into the open streets and let them flee, only to be hunted like prey across the slag plains. One warband, bearing the skin-flayed armor of the old 8th Legion, erected a tower of skulls in the main plaza of Karkassan Prime. Around it, they scrawled the Eightfold Path in Prometheum, lighting it aflame with the words, "Fear is eternal." The PDF commander attempted to rally a counterattack. His upper torso was found days later, nailed to the ceiling of the command bunker, eyes removed and replaced with mining scanner lenses. The bunker's interior had been converted into a temple of agony, its walls stitched with flesh-bound banners made from the garrison's dead. In the lower shafts of Processing Station Hecrus, the Night Lords toyed with their prey. Civilians were given crude melee weapons and forced to fight each other for the amusement of their captors. Winners were rewarded with a slower death. One of the legionaries, known only as Gore-Tongue, filmed these games and broadcast them on a loop into the surviving population centers. It was never about conquest. It was about despair. By the third day, the planet's governor had taken his own life on Live Vox, a bolt pistol in his mouth as he sobbed out prayers to the Emperor. His body was found weeks later with a Vox recorder lodged in his chest. The message played on repeat. "He cannot save you." The few remaining PDF battalions made a final stand at Refinery 17, welding its blast doors shut and readying heavy stubbers and missile launchers. The Night Lords did not attack immediately. Instead, they waited until nightfall and filled the surrounding trenches with captured civilians, crucified and moaning. When the defenders opened the doors to try and save them, they were met with flashbangs, shrieking war cries, and laughter that never seemed to end. The refinery's ruins burned for hours. Charred bodies lay in contorted poses, hands still locked in the positions they had used to shield their eyes, mouths frozen in eternal screams. And above it all, from the black-streaked clouds, the Night Lord's warship Thronefall hung in orbit like a vulture over Carrion, silent, watching, feeding. In only a week, Karkassan was theirs, not held by martial force, but paralyzed by horror. There was no infrastructure left, no coordinated resistance, just pockets of the terrified, the insane, and the dying. It was not a victory, it was a warning, and the Imperium had finally heard it. Chapter 4. Part 2. Threads of shame and smoke. The Thunderhawks punched through the cloud line of Karkassan's soot-stained sky like falling blades, their armored hulls glinting in the flicker of distant fires below. The mining world's surface was a desolation of ash-choked ravines, rusted drill platforms, and crater-riddled refineries, the kind of industrial corpse a dying forge left behind when stripped to the bone. But now it breathed again, fed by new masters. From the Vox intercepts and orbital scans, the Night Lords had nested themselves deep, scarring the land further with their cruel occupation. Daemon Titan stood at the rear ramp of his descending Thunderhawk, flanked by his trusted triad Decimus Cole, Gordos Cyanide, and Radan Bane. As the vessel trembled under atmospheric pressure, he stared out at the world, jaw clenched. "We descend into hell," Damon muttered, voice like gravel. Cole glanced over. "We've done worse." "No," Damon growled. "We are worse." He turned toward them, his voice quieter but thick with emotion. "Every time I face them, every time I look into the eyes of one of those monsters, I see us. What we could have become. What we might still become." Radan, silent as always, turned his head, listening intently. Damon's voice lowered, filled with bitter shame. "Our chapter, our bloodline, it comes from the Night Lords. And that truth, it's a burden none of us wanted. That's why we hide it. To the Imperium and the other chapters, we claim to be descended from the Raven Guard. Only the Night Orchids know the truth. That stain of dread heritage, that shadow of terror, it haunts us. And I hate it. I hate that we must lie just to survive." Cyanide shrugged, his tone half serious. "Well, at least we got the stealth tactics and not the casual homicide. You ever see one of those bastards try to outflank? Artful. If it weren't for all the skinning." Cole snorted, then fixed his chapter master with a firmer gaze. "Damon, we're not them. You know that. You feel shame? Good. Let it sharpen you, not break you. We didn't choose our blood, but we can choose how it's spent. So spend it saving the innocent, not drowning in guilt." Damon nodded slowly, exhaling like a man releasing a weight from his soul. Radan finally spoke, his voice clear and deliberate through the filtered grill of his helm. "I don't care what black blood runs in our veins. Our future is our own. Let's make it something worth being remembered for." The four of them stood in unified silence for a beat, before the Thunderhawk lurched as it reached the drop zone. Then the storm broke. Even before their boots struck metal, the world around them erupted. Autocannon fire lanced from concealed emplacements. Bolters screamed death from the shadows. The Thunderhawks were targeted mid-descent. Two of the Night Orchid's dropships were torn apart in the air, spiraling into flaming wreckage across the slag hills. Night Lords surged from the ruins like shadows with teeth, cutting through the initial wave of Night Orchids and Huntsmen alike. Screams of loyalist Marines crackled across the Vox. These weren't disorganized traitors. They moved in squads, coordinated, disciplined, with perfect kill zones and ambush tactics that belied their reputation for chaos. The fighting was vicious. Every refinery hall became a slaughterhouse. Every ventilation shaft birthed another ambush. Power blades shimmered in the dark and chain blades roared in blood and oil. Titan fought with roaring fury, hammering a Night Lord sergeant into a fractured wall so hard his ribcage exploded. He didn't stop swinging. Cole fought beside him, decapitating one traitor, then disemboweling another. Cyanide's servo arm twitched with violent efficiency, pinning a foe to the ground while his bolt pistol turned the traitor's helm into paste. But even through the carnage, they noticed, this wasn't the usual warband. These Night Lords were veterans, maybe even survivors of the Long War. Saelion Ragus, captain of the Night Orchids, moved with his own hand-picked squad. Erists, Keren, Vairian, Nazarian, and Thekt staying mobile, cutting deeper into the enemy-held regions with tactical precision. To the outside observer, they fought with perfect cohesion and loyalty. Their armor bore only faint signs of corruption, deliberately dulled, their mannerisms restrained. Even Nazarian's gas-masked helm, which constantly hissed with a contained haze of inhaled smoke, could be passed off as eccentricity rather than heresy. But Radan Bane was watching. Under the cover of shadow and ash, Radan trailed them, using the advanced audio receivers built into his sniper helm to pick up faint vox whispers and vocal chatter. His helm interpreted lip movement and reconstructed speech from micro vibrations in the air. He remained low, cloaked in shadow and static, and what he heard turned his blood cold. Erist speaking in florid, theatrical tones about how their every strike was a scene, a grand performance for Slanesh's boundless attention. Keren muttering about auditory frequencies and the unheard symphonies of death. Vairian making idle comments about how refining the mining data feeds could double as psychological warfare. And Thekt, always whispering in Saelion's ear, always turning suggestions into seeds. "You've done well, brother captain," he cooed. "But we mustn't waste the momentum. The Huntsmen are good warriors, yes, but bound, caged. They'd betray you if they ever discovered what you've become. Better we act first." Radan's fists tightened. They were lost. These weren't brothers. They were something else now. He had to report back. He turned to retreat, and then, a shadow dropped behind him like a guillotine. He spun to raise his rifle, but too late. A gauntleted fist slammed into his chest, sending him tumbling. His rifle skittered away into the dirt. The figure that advanced from the smog was massive, cloaked in bat-winged armor, lightning talons crackling. A Night Lord's captain, his armor covered in flayed flesh and voxcaster cords. Radin surged up, drawing his combat knife, but it wasn't a duel. It was a slaughter. The Night Lord captain moved like lightning, driving a talon into Radin's shoulder and slamming him to the ground. Radin fought, kicked, headbutted, but he was disarmed, overpowered, then beaten until the world blurred. The last thing he saw was the glint of the Night Lord's helm under the moon, and the hiss of a rebreather, then darkness, and silence. Chapter 4. Part 3. Blood and Silence. The trial by fire. The shattered industrial zone of Karkassan had become a crucible of war. Smoke curled like sinister serpents from ruptured pipes and smoldering wreckage. The air was thick with the acrid stench of promethium and ozone, mingled with the metallic tang of spilled blood. In this hellscape, two loyalist chapters, the Huntsman and the Night Orchids, faced an enemy more brutal than they had anticipated. Daemon Titan advanced through the debris-strewn battlefield with a grim, unyielding resolve. Around him, squads of intercessors and aggressors moved in coordinated sweeps, bolters barking in deadly bursts. The Night Orchids, their violet and silver armor dulled by grime, fought with precise ferocity alongside the Huntsman, but every step forward was contested fiercely by the Night Lords. These traitors were not the disorganized rabble seen in previous skirmishes. They fought with a terrifying unity and tactical discipline, weaving deadly ambushes and counterattacks. Their methods were cruel and efficient. Hit hard, withdraw, then strike again from a new angle. Daemon's vox crackled. Report casualties. A fatigued sergeant's voice answered. Huntsman losses: 42 confirmed. Kia. Night Orchids: 56. Cyanide's dry laugh was almost bitter as he muttered, for all their reputation as terrible warriors, these Night Lords sure have a funny way of winning. Decimus Cole's gaze sharpened immediately. This is no laughing matter, Cyanide. Each lost brother is a wound to the chapter. Take this seriously. Daemon's tone was clipped, edged with frustration and urgency. Focus on the mission. We must not let anger or jest cloud our judgment. Every fallen brother must be honored by finishing this fight. Cyanide's expression sobered. Understood, Chapter Master. Daemon wiped sweat from his brow, his jaw clenched. The Night Lords are better trained and more coordinated than we expected. We have underestimated them, and it has cost us dearly. Cole nodded grimly. We need to tighten formations and watch for their ambush tactics. As the firefight roared around them, Daemon felt the weight of every loss. His chest burned, not just with the physical exertion but with a deeper anger. The gene heritage linking his chapter to the Night Lords was a bitter legacy he had long kept buried. Today, fighting this enemy, the shame and hatred he carried toward their shared origin flared in his mind. He remained silent on this to his brothers here, focusing instead on rallying them to save the innocents caught in the crossfire. But the bitterness lingered like a thorn in his heart. Nearby, Cole and Cyanide exchanged tense glances. Both were watching the Night Orchids closely, aware of subtle changes in their battle behavior. Their suspicions were quiet, unspoken, but present. Cole's sharp eyes scanned the field. He noticed Radin Bane was not among the squads. He exchanged a brief look with Cyanide. He's missing, Cole said quietly, his brow furrowed. Find him. We can't afford to lose any more brothers. Cyanide gave a curt nod. We will. The cacophony of war pressed in from every side as the loyalists fought to hold their ground, the Night Lords pressing their advantage with cruel precision. The captive's defiance. Radin Bane lay bound in a dank cell carved into the rock beneath the ruins. Chains bit into his wrists and ankles, bruises blooming like dark flowers on his battered flesh. His armor was cracked and scorched, evidence of the brutal capture and interrogation attempts. Across from him stood the Night Lord captain, a monstrous figure clad in spiked ceramite, his face a grotesque mask of scars and cruelty. His eyes gleamed with sadistic delight as he paced before the imprisoned huntsman. You are a stubborn one, the captain sneered, his voice dripping with menace. But it is not too late. Tell me what I want to know. Your chapter's secrets, their weaknesses. Help me tear them down. Radin met his gaze with cold defiance. His breath was ragged, but his will remained unbroken. Not a word escaped his lips. Frustration twisted the Night Lord's face into a snarl. He signaled to his torturers, hulking brutes wielding cruel implements. They dragged Bane to the cold stone slab, strapping him down as the captain leaned close. You will scream, huntsman. You will break. The torment began. Fangs of metal pierced skin. Searing pain pulsed through every nerve. Oils that burned like fire were poured over fresh wounds. Yet Radin clenched his jaw, every muscle taut with resistance. Through it all, the sniper's mind remained sharp. His Voxcaster helm, though battered, still hummed faintly, attuned to distant sounds, each whispered conversation among guards, every footstep beyond the cell door. It was a lifeline to his brothers, a thread of hope in the darkness. His captors were brutal, relentless, but Radin's resolve was ironclad. He refused to betray the huntsman. Each moment of pain only hardened his defiance. When the Night Lord captain growled in frustration and threatened further torment, Radin's icy gaze held steady, unyielding as the granite walls around him. In the silence of his captivity, amid the echoing torments, Radin's mind was with his brothers, still fighting above, determined to survive, to return, and to make sure their sacrifices were not in vain. Chapter 4. Part 4. The Long Walk. The air was thick with scorched promethium and pulverized stonacrete. The mines of Karkassan burned around the huntsman, gutted by war, blackened with smoke, and soaked in blood. Amidst this carnage, Daemon Titan carved another traitor in two with a furious roar. His gauntlet dripped with viscera, but his mind was focused on every wasted life, every broken promise, and every soul still worth saving. His Vox flared to life. Cole, cyanide, here, Chapter Master. Cole replied over the din of bolter fire. I've lost contact with Bane. Find him. His precision is worth more than 10 bolters today. Cyanide, already pulling up Auspex data, responded with his usual drawl. Right in the middle of an artillery-fueled love letter, and now we're playing hide and seek? Find him. Titan repeated. Bring him back. Yes, sir. Cole confirmed already, veering out of formation. Cyanide followed, shielding his Vox unit as he worked through static and distortion. Give me a sec, Cyanide murmured, eyes narrowing behind his lenses. There, faint trace ping, way behind the lines. Either he's hunting or being hunted. Cole grunted. Camille line up. Quiet entry. As their forms shimmered and faded into the surrounding ruins, they disappeared into the gutted remains of the city works, leaving the front lines behind. The roar of battle grew distant, replaced by groaning metal and the whisper of ash on stone. Halfway through their route, they froze. A wet, meaty crunch echoed from the next intersection. They moved to cover, weapons ready. A Night Lord staggered out from the haze, his chest plate cracked, an eye missing. He raised his chainsword. Too slow. A Crozius Arcanum slammed through his skull with a dull, resonant crack, snapping his spine with the force of a falling hammer. The wielder stood tall, covered in blood and dust. Sorgan Morphus, the huntsman's chaplain, lowered his Crozius and turned to them, his helm still locked in place. His black armor bore long rents, and one arm hung slightly lower than the other. Cyanide tilted his head. Nice timing. Morphus didn't respond at first. Then, he was the last. Cole stepped forward. Where's your squad? Dead, Morphus said flatly, wiping gore from his weapon on a torn Night Lord's banner. I buried the last one 10 minutes ago. Cole hesitated, unsure how to respond. Cyanide, unusually quiet, gave a short nod. We're on a retrieval, Cole said. Brother Radin, captured. We're bringing him back. Morphus paused. So he's still alive? We believe so, Cole replied. I'll come, Morphus said, tone unreadable. There are debts yet unpaid. With that, the trio moved as one, navigating the ruins of Karkassan's refinery blocks. They passed melted vehicle husks and the bones of workers turned to ash. The Night Lords had entrenched, but the three huntsmen moved like whispers of vengeance. They came upon a pair of heretics standing watch beside a half-collapsed bridge, unaware of the silent retribution approaching. Cole surged forward, plunging his knife beneath one's pauldron, driving it upward into his throat before dragging the corpse behind cover. Cyanide, close behind, fired a single bolt into the other's helm at close range, the muffled pop barely registering over the wind. A few hundred meters deeper, they found another duo inspecting a shattered Vox station. Morphus struck like lightning, cracking one marine's ribs and caving in the other's skull in a single swing. He said nothing, even as the crozier steamed with blood. Cyanide exchanged a glance with Cole. Remind me not to get on his bad side. You're not on his good side either, Cole muttered. Eventually, the auspex began to hum louder. Radon's signal flared briefly, then stabilized. Coming from a structure ahead. Part refinery. Part administrative block walled with stacked ore canisters and rusted servitor scaffolds. Cyanide scanned the perimeter. There, that's it. Cole lowered into a crouch, eyes narrowing as he studied the approach. Guard rotations, light, overconfident. Cyanide replied. Arrogant bastards don't think we'd come for our own. Morphus adjusted his grip on the Crozius, the weapon humming with latent power. Cole checked his bolt gun, then his blade. No alarms, no noise. We go in quiet. We bring Bane home. The three ghosts of vengeance slipped toward the heretic's den, blades primed and vengeance ready, and Radon waited within. Chapter 4. Part 5. The Veiled Petal. The glow of Karkassan's underhive shimmered like rot beneath skin. Somewhere above them, the battle raged on. Bolt of fire and plasma beams igniting the night, but down here, beneath the wreckage of manufactorums and ancient rail systems, Captain Saelion Ragus walked among whispers. With him moved his hand-picked 5 Erists, Keren, Nazarian, Vairian, and Thekt, a squad ostensibly loyal, yet seething with the rot of divinity. They moved in near silence through the abandoned arteries of the city, checking flank corridors and bypassing blind auger zones with practiced ease. Despite their outer loyalty, each step they took spoke of inner heresy. Addiction in the shadows. Erists moved like a dancer through the dust-choked corridor, his fingers brushing against shattered glass as though it were velvet. Captain, he said softly, how long will you pretend we serve the Imperium? This act wears thin. His words were poetry now, not sarcasm. We've given you time. You've seen the truth. Felt it in the orchard's bloom. The chorus is growing. Keren followed behind him, silent for a moment, humming a haunting melody under his breath, fingers tapping a rhythm against his vambrace. You've led us well, brother, but soon it must be more than performance. Soon it must be revelation. The prince demands crescendos, not interludes. Saelion said nothing yet. His silence was not agreement, but it was not denial either. Nazarian's voice hissed through the filters of his heavily modified helmet. The smoke is rising, Saelion. I can feel it in every breath. We've already begun, and nearly the entire chapter breathes it with us. The orchid has grown roots in fertile soil. At this, Vairian turned from checking a rusted wall console and looked at Saelion. His voice was calm, almost reverent. Only 6 squads remain trapped in the Imperium's dogma. The rest have been awakened, enlightened. They walk the orchid path now, just as we do. Saelion exhaled slowly. And those 6? Vairian's reply was quiet and bloodless. Monitored, watched. They will not interfere, unless we delay. Then Thekt, ever the instigator, stepped forward. His voice was softer than any of the others, but more dangerous. When we break from the huntsman, and we will, those 6 squads must be dealt with. If they won't walk forward into beauty, they must be buried beneath it. The silence that followed was only broken by the thrum of ancient power conduits far below the underhive. Saelion stared at the cold concrete wall, still stained with the blood of centuries. They are our brothers, he said. We marched together for decades. Thekt gave a tight smile. So did we. Before Alistair, the orchid bloomed. The roots cannot share soil with thorns. A shifting tide. Saelion clenched a fist. He could not say the others were wrong. The past weeks had proven the falsehood of imperial purpose. He'd seen miracles. He'd felt the orchid heal him. The imperial creed never gave him that. He turned to the 5. If we do this, it must be clean, precise. I will not have the night orchids descend into barbarism. Erists bowed with a theatrical sweep. We would expect nothing less. Keren chuckled, already sketching the beats of their future revolt in his mind like a musician rehearsing before a grand unveiling. Resolution, not yet action. Saelion turned and began walking once more, leading them deeper into the sub-levels. We proceed with the huntsman for now. Damon is not stupid. He senses more than he says. But when the time is right, we act. Vairian gave a simple nod. Nazarian breathed in a long, rattling pull of polluted air. Behind them, Thekt looked to the others and spoke the unspoken. When the time comes, we'll cull the weak,